Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for day 2 of the Ayrshire Women's Cycle Festival for our second live webinar and question and answer with Rhian Davies. Rhian is a cis-trans workplace officer. She's based in the NHS, Dumfries and Galloway. And Rhian's going to be talking about what it's like to live with post-viral fatigue. And I think once we actually sort of get into the webinar there, you'll actually find that it resonates with quite a lot of people, particularly with long COVID and different things at the moment as well there. So my name's Faye Podger and I'm one of the project officers with the Kilmarnock Active Travel Hub. Also joining me today in the background is Holly Barwick, one of my colleagues, and she's going to be tech support for the morning. For those of you who don't know, the Ayrshire Women's Cycle Festival is a joint project between the 3 Ayrshire hubs. So that's the hub at Kilmarnock, our sister hub in Ayr, and also the Trinity Active Travel Hub in Irvine. In previous years, for those of you that's maybe joined us before, the festival started off as a face-to-face event. And then once COVID came along, we made the decision to take the festival online. So that's what's happened over the past couple of years. Following the success of the online events, this year we were absolutely delighted to be able to bring a blended approach to the festival. So we're now offering a mixture of online and in-person activities. So we've got our in-person day on Saturday down at the Trinity there. So hopefully a few of you can join us for that face-to-face, real people, talking to people and seeing people. So all 3 hubs have a common goal, and it's of promoting and encouraging walking, cycling and scooting, particularly for the short journeys. So whenever possible, if it's a journey to the shops, the commute to work, or even the school run, why not just leave the car at home, pick up your bike or your walking shoes and just swap them just for the morning. You'll feel better for it, I promise. So now that COVID restrictions have been eased, we're now once again able to offer a variety of activities through the hubs. That includes cycle skills, bike maintenance sessions and classes, instructor-led walks and rides, and basically general advice on for any individuals or any businesses that are looking to cycle a little bit more in their daily lives. So you'll find information on all 3 hubs on the Ayrshire Women's Cycle Festival website, and Holly will just pop that into the chat, just a link there for you, but it's actually at www.ayrshirewomen'scyclefestival.org. So that's where you'll find the information there. So just before I hand over to Rhian this morning, I'm just going to run through a few very important housekeeping tips with us all. So the webinar this morning is being recorded, just simply so that we can upload it onto the website, and then people can come back at a later date when they've got a bit more time and just look at things again. So we'll be uploading the links to that probably next week onto the website. This morning, I'm sure some of you will be pleased to see that we can't see or hear you. You can only see and hear us, but we do want to interact with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw your attention to the chat box, which is down at the bottom of your screen. It's the facility down there. You can use this to chat to us, to post any questions that you've got, and you can either do it just to the panelists or to the whole audience there. The only thing that we will ask is that you're going to be kind. Please be kind to us there. Okay. So finally, after the presentation, there's going to be some time for questions with Rhian. Again, if you just want to post any questions, pop them into the chat and then we'll come back to these later on. You've also got the option to post anonymously if you don't want to put your name down there as well. So just use it whatever way that you're happy with there. So if we run out of time, what we'll do is we'll take a note of the questions and then we can post them to Rhian, and then we can get them up on the website after the festival's finished there. So I'd now like to hand you over to Rhian, who's got a short presentation, and then we're going to take some questions afterwards. So morning, Julie, I'm just seeing some people popping up in the chat there as well. So Rhian, I'm just going to hand you over now for your presentation, and then I'll come back to you in a little while. Morning, welcome and morning.
Thank you, Faye, and yeah, thanks for inviting me along to take part in the cycle festival. It's the first time that I've been along, so yeah, really pleased to be here. So that should be my presentation up, but yeah, give me a shout if it's not there. So yeah, I'm Rhian. I'm one of the cis-trans workplace engagement officers in Dumfries and Galloway. And yeah, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome about 4 years ago. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. So I'll start with kind of painting a picture of what my lifestyle was like before the diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome, giving you a brief overview of all the kind of techniques that I use to manage the fatigue, and I'll be focusing on how electric bikes have helped me, and a little bit also about electric bikes more generally. So yeah, before I had chronic fatigue syndrome, I was very active, so just popped a few photos down to kind of give you an impression of what my life was like. So I had very active jobs. I previously worked for Sustrans as an Ebike officer working in schools. I've been a ranger for National Trust, RSPB, Scottish Wildlife Trust, all very kind of active jobs where you're out all day. I also worked for the government in the Rural Payments Division. That involved a lot of walking, could walk upwards of 12 miles a day, as well as sort of cycling to and from work. My hobbies were also very active. So things like a lot of wildlife surveying, things like bird ringing before I went to work, orienteering. I really enjoy going camping. I was really into hill walking as well. So I was a member of the Ramblers in Dumfries and Galloway, and I've climbed a fair few Munros and quite a lot of Lakeland Fells as well. I was also very into cycle touring. So I've done kind of tours of Shetland, Republic of Ireland, the coast to coast, the England coast to coast, Hadrian's Wall route and the Tweed Valley route. So I wouldn't have described myself as sporty, but I was definitely active. And then in October 2017, I began just feeling unwell. Basically just felt, like when you get flu and you're just starting to feel the symptoms of it, you just start to feel a bit unwell. I just felt like that, but it never got any worse. I never kind of developed full-blown flu, but I also never really got any better. So I was kind of on and off work for the next 6 months, went to a lot of GP appointments, had various tests done, and then ended up going to the rheumatology department at DGRI, which is when they diagnosed me with post-viral fatigue. So they tested for lots of other conditions and they all came back negative. So eventually they said it's post-viral fatigue. And after 6 months of having that, it just gets classified as chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's what you call a negative diagnosis. It's ruled out everything else. So yeah, that's kind of what it is. At this time, I got in touch with the Dumfries and Galloway ME and fibromyalgia group because they offer a lot of support locally. And I actually attended a film that they put on at the local cinema called Unrest, which is by Jennifer Bray. So it's a very powerful film and it's not particularly light watching, but it does really get the kind of point across about how serious these kind of conditions and specifically ME can be. So yeah, after getting kind of feedback and advice from the people at the ME and fibromyalgia group, I just basically changed my lifestyle quite a bit. So the kind of biggest change I made was that I switched from working full-time to working part-time. And, I recognise this is not a viable option for everyone, but also you need to be realistic about your priorities. So I was fortunate I was able to prioritise my health. My partner has a full-time job, which is permanent. So we're in a position to be able to do that. Another really useful technique, which I still use, is pacing. So this is the idea of kind of keeping an eye on what kind of your energy envelope is. And the best advice I could give really is to start from zero. So kind of forget what you used to be able to do. Instead of saying like, oh, I used to be able to walk, I could walk 10 miles, so I'll just walk 4. Start from zero and then work up. So to begin with, I'd perhaps walk just sort of 10 minutes a day, and gradually that went up and up. And now I can kind of walk 5-6 miles in a day. I also kept a diary, which really helped with the pacing. It also helped me kind of recognise what the triggers were for making me feel the days that I felt really fatigued. So this was things like alcohol, caffeine, sugar, bad sleep management, all made my symptoms worse, which isn't really a surprise because these are all good habits for everyone anyway. As part of this, I was able to plan. So again, this is really important. And again, I still use this technique. So basically planning your days. So if you know you're going to have like a busy day, or perhaps go to someone's wedding, something like that, I'll plan a rest day either side of that, where I literally just didn't do anything, or wouldn't plan anything else in. I also did some cognitive behavioural therapy because I felt very low and quite anxious as well when I sort of returned to work. And I think a big thing with this was it helped me kind of accept the condition. And acceptance is not the same as giving up, which I think is something that I found difficult at the time. I also do yoga, because I've always done yoga, but I've switched to a kind of less energetic type. And then I also got my electric bike. So walking and cycling are two of the things that kind of make me. So getting the electric bike was a really important part of helping me get better and kind of return to a bit of normality. So I'm just going to give you a little general introduction to electric bikes. So electric bikes, or e-bikes, in the UK, legal ones are electrically assisted pedal cycles. So this means you can't just sit on the bike and it goes. You do have to be pedaling. So it's like a regular bike in that you have to pedal, but you have the assist of a motor. So the motor kind of makes it feel like you're always riding with the wind behind you, or it kind of flattens out all the hills. In the UK as well, it's a legal thing. The assist cuts out at 15.5 miles an hour. So if you want to go any faster than that, it has to be under your own steam, or if you're freewheeling downhill. There's all sorts of varieties of bikes now that are electric. So, folding bikes, trikes, road bikes, mountain bikes, touring bikes. There's hundreds out there. The charges do vary a bit. So depending how many miles you can get out of the battery, it depends on how much the bike cost, how powerful the battery is, the weight of the load on it, how hilly it is, and what level of assist you use as well. So the bikes do tend to be heavier because they're carrying the motor and the battery, but this is offset by the fact you have the assistance of the motor. So you normally have 3 or 4 levels of assist, and the different levels basically kind of dictate how early the assist kicks in and the kind of maximum strength of push it will give you. So you can change that whilst you're cycling around. So I'm just going to talk you through the e-bikes that I've had. So I think all of this is kind of within the caveat of electric bikes are great and they've really helped me, but it is only in conjunction with the other techniques that I've talked about for managing the condition, especially pacing and rest. So like I say, started from 0 and worked up. So the first electric bike that I got was a Volt Burlington. I should say I'm not on commission, by the way, for any of these. So I got this one. It has a hub motor. So this is where the motor is in the wheel hub. So on mine it was in the back wheel, and on others you get it in the front wheel. So initially I found the hub driven really useful, because hub drives, they can kind of be a bit more pushy. So you sort of feel like you've been pushed around quite strongly. It's not like a particularly subtle assist, but this is kind of what I really needed, because my energy levels were so low that I needed that help of just being pushed around basically. So as my energy got back up, so I'd literally be cycling perhaps 1 or 2 miles on the electric bike, and I had that for about 2 years. And then basically, my energy's come back. So my energy envelope has got bigger. So like I say, initially I could only walk 10 minutes, cycle a mile. And then I got to a point where I was getting up to kind of 5-6 miles cycling, and a couple of miles walking. So at that point, I thought I want something a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more like riding a bike. So I went for e-bike number 2, which is my Ridgeback Electron, which is the one that I currently have. So this has a mid motor. So here the motor is actually in the bottom bracket, so where the pedals are. And these style of bikes, they tend to be a bit more subtle, a bit more intuitive. It's a more similar feeling to riding a regular bike. So these are kind of good if you're a regular cyclist and used to that kind of feel. So e-bike number 3, I've not bought it yet. And I must say, normally with things, I tend to buy a thing and I keep it forever. And this is one of the few things that I have changed. So so I'm looking to stick with an electric bike, definitely, and I'm going to stick with the mid motor. But basically, my current bike is a kind of city style bike. It's got hub gears, which means taking the back wheel off is a bit tricky. And now I'm able to cycle a bit further. I'm able to cycle out of Dumfries and around the countryside. I need a bike that I know I can change the inner tube on if I get a puncture. So I'm basically looking for another electric bike with a bit more mileage and with derailleur gears. So yes, watch this space, see what I get next. Oh, and also I must say, I haven't kept all these bikes. I sold the first one so I could buy my second. So yeah, my recovery, like I say, I've definitely improved. The worst day I had was in 2018 when, I didn't leave the house for a week and I could barely move from my bedroom to the sofa, and we live in a bungalow, so it's not a big distance. So the hardest thing has been recognising that I can't do the same amount as I used to, but that doesn't mean that I don't have to do anything. So these are all photos of things that I've done since 2018 when I was diagnosed. And what was interesting about doing this, it allowed me to reflect quite a bit on how I've recovered. And it's kind of interesting to see that the photos aren't that different from the ones that I showed you from sort of pre-2018. So I'm still going walking, but it's not to the tops of big hills. It's often in the valleys or in the smaller fells. I still go camping, but with the car rather than on my bike. And I still do a wildlife recording. So I'm big into moth trapping, which isn't dangerous with the moths. So that's what I'm up to in the bottom left-hand corner there, which I do in my garden. And yeah, and I do a lot of gardening now as well, which I didn't used to. And those are all kind of, especially the gardening is an activity that's enabled me to be outside, and enjoy being outside, but without needing to expend quite so much energy. So, like I say, this has taken time. It's been 4 years. I still have days when I have rest days, when I perhaps don't leave the house or garden. And I know that I just need to do a bit of gentle yoga, watch a bit of TV, have a bath. And it's really important to fit in the time to do that. I found that e-cycling is easier than walking for me. So I think I've changed journeys a bit. So journeys that I used to walk, I'm more likely to take my e-bike now. And yeah, keeping a diary has just been so useful. Useful for spotting kind of when I'm perhaps coming up to a relapse, or like making myself a bit too tired. And it's also been really useful as a way of noting how I've recovered, because it has been very gradual, but I'm able to look back and see how much I have come on. And of course, I've still been able to get out on my bike, all because of my electric bike. And last year, I was able to do a couple of rides on my e-bike of about 25 miles. So again, this is with planning. So I'd have a rest day before. I'd spend all day doing the bike ride. It wasn't a quick thing. And then the next day would be another rest day. But I found I could do it because of the help of my electric bike. So yeah, thank you for listening. And I think we're going to take some questions now, and I'll stop sharing my screen as well.
Fabulous. Rhian, that was so inspiring, just reading and just watching your journey there. And like you say, it's a slow hog, that it's not an overnight fix there. It's something that is really going to take time. But looking at your photographs at the end there and seeing the things that you're able to do now, like you said, in comparison, and some of them are quite similar to the picture at the back. It's just great to be able to see you doing those things again, maybe, and finding some new passions like gardening, which you never done before. So just, yeah, being able to see you smiling again and doing all these things is really inspiring. That there is light at the end of the tunnel. It might sometimes feel like, or to you, that it's been a long tunnel, but to see you getting that journey, it's been amazing. You made some really good points there for people, I think, on pacing yourself. And I myself actually got diagnosed with long COVID a few months back there, and some of the things you're saying there I can kind of relate to. And sometimes you kind of think, am I going mad? I haven't got a bit of brain fog. Do you forget things? And it is real things here. Pacing, I think, and particularly now with other people with this whole long COVID situation there, is we do, and like you need to remember or the other way actually around, forget about what you were able to do before and just think about where you're going to start now. So start from the zero. So every day it's what you can manage that day. And I think that's a great way to look at, a really positive way to kind of start and look at things there. And your diary as well. And you just mentioned the likes of alcohol and sleep and different things like this, but obviously, yeah, it will have an effect. And I think you might not realize until you are putting it down on a diary, and that's when you're kind of seeing a bit of a connection between things, and that would obviously be different for each individual person there. So I think, again, that's a really good tip for somebody to put on. You mentioned your bikes as well, and that when you get things you tend to keep them forever. So are you just going to accumulate, a range of different e-bikes, or are you actually going to ever part with the ones before? Or
well, yeah, I guess
won't tell the other half, it's okay.
Yeah, we do have a bit of an argument about this because we don't have a garage, so we have a metal kind of lockup, and it can just about fit 4 bikes in, 3 of which are mine and 1 of which is his.
Well, I'm sure he could borrow one of yours, really.
Well, exactly. But the first bike, the Volt Burlington, I sold that to put towards buying the second bike, because that was more expensive. And I think I'll probably do the same thing when I'm going to switch to a different electric. Basically, I've got an electric bike. I've got a regular bike, which is actually on loan to someone else at the moment, and a folding bike, which is a regular bike. Right,
that's fab. That's good. Well, Lucy, one of the people that come and watch the Lucy was saying that she recommends looking into a switch kit, because it means you can convert standard bicycles into an electric ones as well. So this is obviously if somebody doesn't want to go out and purchase an electric bike. So the links are in the chat there, and Holly's we've got the links there as well for you. So thanks very much for that. That's some great advice. Lovely. People just saying that they're really enjoying, Julie, that you're really enjoying hearing your story. She's wondering if you can suggest any online networks which would provide peer support for people with post-viral fatigue.
Yeah, I think it's always good to look locally. So obviously I'm from Dumfries and Galloway, and we have a local group. But there are national ones. So I think the ME network, are quite a big one. And there's another one that's thinking of. Also for people who have long COVID, there's a lot of long COVID groups that have been set up. So I think Facebook has a lot of these kind of patient support groups. So it is really good to, like you said about it, you feel like, are you going mad? Am I just overreacting? Like at one point when I was unwell, I was like, is this just me getting older? Is this
I can relate to that one as well. Yeah.
I was like, no, this is not what it should be like. And it's that thing you don't have to explain to the other, other people who have similar symptoms.
Yes.
You don't have to explain, people just know.
So one of the things you just touched on, something I was going to ask you there. So at what point did you actually realise there is an issue here? It's not just, I'm getting old, I'm thinking I'm getting old, or whatever. When you actually thought, I genuinely have an issue here that needs to be investigated.
I think it was probably when I went to watch the film on rest and just chatting with the other people at the ME and fibromyalgia group. And I think, and at that point it had been like, how long was it? Perhaps been like 3 or 4 months that I'd been unwell. And I bet a lot of people listening to this are the sort of people who they get ill but they bounce back quite quickly. And it's a really unsettling experience to realise that's not happening. And I think there is a little bit of kind of trying to ignore it, and just to begin with, I just tried to carry on as normal.
I was going to say, how did you feel when you first kind of found out things? How did you kind of react?
Well, I think because you're always trying to look for a diagnosis, I think, with things like this. So, I was tested for a lot of things like Lyme disease, lupus, low iron, all these sort of things. And it is that thing, isn't it? I think there is a strange comfort in getting a diagnosis, because then it is that thing of at least I know what it is now. And I think that's one of the difficult things with things like long COVID, ME, fibro. There isn't any kind of there's no sort of set treatment. which makes it difficult. But once I'd heard from the people at the group, and I just thought, yeah, this sounds exactly what I've got. And then I just listened to what they had to say, and there were two people who were really adamant. They were like, if you can work part-time, do it. So because, and these are total strangers, I don't just met them, and they were so adamant about that this was a good thing to do. And they were, one of them in particular, someone who suffers really badly with ME, and he'd said, like, if I'd taken the time at the beginning of my illness to rest and recover, I wouldn't necessarily be like how I am now. And that really hit home.
Great advice, great advice to be taken.
Yeah, and especially after watching Unrest, like I said, it's a good film, but it is quite upsetting. And yeah, and it's that thing, like I said, when you look back, like 4 years sounds like a long time, but it's in your darkest moments when you're feeling really upset with it, it's the future seems a long way off. But it's worth sticking with the resting, recovering, pacing. Yeah,
that sounds like great advice here. So what barriers are you finding now that makes it hard to live with a condition? Because I know obviously you're trying to manage a lot of things, but there must still be barriers that you're coming across, that some things are a bit more difficult than others.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so I still work part-time, though I've recently upped my hours. That's just in the last couple of weeks. So I'm sort of still trying to find a balance with that and actually work out if it is a sensible decision or not.
I was going to say, how are you feeling with that at the moment? You're still quite new, but
it's still quite new. And I think because obviously with like COVID and where we are now with that, everything that was cancelled in 2020, 2021 seems to now be happening in April and May.
Yeah.
So it does feel a bit full on. Yeah, so I think actually I was just looking at the chat there, someone's asking about finding part-time jobs, and it is difficult to find part-time jobs, and I was really fortunate in that I was in this current role where I work with the NHS, and my line manager was really supportive of me going down to part-time hours, and I was incredibly lucky. Like, I almost left the job because I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't even walk like out of my house. How can I possibly be doing a job where I'm promoting walking and cycling? But then my line manager convinced me to stay and suggested that as an option. So I've been really, really lucky. But yeah, that did cross my mind about getting kind of admin roles that were sort of slightly less taxing. But I think one thing to be aware of is, like, it's not just physical and energy from physical activity, like mental activity had a bigger impact when I realised. So I'm quite a sociable person, but I hadn't realised that actually all those sort of social interactions that you have, they can be really tiring. And
yeah, I was going to say, did you experience like cognitive dysfunction or like the brain fog type of thing, like with long COVID? Did you experience that quite a bit or at all? Or
I definitely had it kind of in the kind of first year. And I just remember this one day, and I was at the office, and I just remember I suddenly felt it was like the clouds had parted and I could suddenly think clearly. And I think that was when I realised that how bad the brain fog had been. But I sort of hadn't noticed like how bad it was until that point, and it just
cleared a little bit.
It did. It just cleared. It was honestly, it was like, when you're outside and it's been a bit dull and overcast, and then all of a sudden the clouds part and the sun comes out. Like, it felt like that, and like, that happened. I mean, I didn't kind of go back to being normal. It was there for a bit, and then I kind of got foggy again. But then that kept happening, and then I got to a point where now, like, most of the time I'm fine, but occasionally, like, if I am feeling a bit worn down, if I've been doing a bit too much, if I haven't slept well, I can feel it creeping back in. But it's good. It's a trigger that I can recognise. Yeah,
that's fab. That's fabulous here. And it's great. I mean, Sustrans, as we all know, they're great company, people to work with, and they're very supportive. And now everything is all about walking and cycling, scooting for everyone. So everyone, and as we know, post-viral fatigue, long COVID, it's a thing that's out there. A lot more people are now recognising this, as conditions now. So tackling it isn't always, like you're saying, about people jumping out on their bikes and going for walks. It's taking the first step. So like you did, it's maybe just going for a 5-minute walk. you know, and then you increase that and increase it. And that is kind of what our roles is to get all these people back out, back active again. So it's not doing your, you know, your 6-mile walk or whatever, you know, it's starting from zero. And we are there to help people, you know, get back to and get that little bit fitter, that little bit further. So, you know, so you are definitely in the right role there. Definitely don't be going anywhere. Right. So how do you motivate yourself? Because obviously the roles that we do there is like motivating other people and things as well. So how do you motivate yourself to go out for a walk or go out for a ride or cycling here when you're feeling tired yourself, or you're just feeling a bit of a brain fog or quite low?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is, I don't go out if I'm feeling tired. Yeah, so rest is really crucial. And you know, it's important to give yourself the time to rest. So yeah, days, I mean, you know, there are times when I do push it, because you might have things that you just have to go and do, you know, like work things, but I know that I'm going to pay for it later on. I actually read a good bit of advice recently, because you might have heard about the spoon method, about like how many spoons of energy you have. And I tend to think of it as like a kind of envelope of energy. And the advice I read was sort of know your limits. So like at one point I knew I could walk 4 miles, but that was like it. But it's like know your limits, but then only go up to 80% of that. So never try and go up to the full 100%. And gradually what you'll find is your energy envelope gets bigger and bigger, and 80% like in 2 years' time is going to be different from your 80% currently.
At what point would you say that you realised what your limit was? Because there's a lot of people out there who would try initially, I would say that we would try and get to where they were at before, not realising that I'm not able to. So at what point did you kind of think, you know, I can't do what I did before, and I do actually have to start from scratch again and
I think
find my limits?
Probably did come at like my kind of lowest point, which is like I said, when I couldn't even leave the house, and I was carrying a glass of water and it was just getting heavier and heavier and heavier, and you know I was only carrying it from the kitchen to the sofa, and at that point I was like, yeah, I'm really ill, like this is really quite serious. And I think the thing with the limits is like it changes all the time. So obviously my limit in 2018 was much different to what it is now, and that's where keeping the diary has been really beneficial. So I should say, as well as the diary, which is sort of just kind of basically a list of what I've done each day, I keep a kind of activity level out of 10 and a symptom level out of 10, so I can see like over time you can see if there's any patterns. So like if I've had a high activity level for a few days, the symptom level probably will go up a bit after. And that as well going to help me work out the triggers. So yeah, it is difficult because it's constantly changing. That's where the diary comes in handy.
It must be positive though to have that diary and to be able to sometimes look back, maybe if you are having a bad day or you feel low or something, to look back to think, do you know what, that is all I was able to do then, but now I can do this. So you can actually, you know, visually see the progression because it's there for yourself. So I guess that's, you know, kind of reinforces that you're doing all the right things and that you are slowly, you know, improving. It must be a positive feeling just to be able to read that and just give you that little bit more.
Definitely, and I think especially at the beginning when you know things just seem so bad and like you're feeling so ill, though actually keeping the diary at the beginning is really useful because any sort of progress is good progress. So yeah, really recommend it.
Fabulous. Someone's put down here there's a free app as well, flaredown.com, and that's for tracking chronic illnesses and events. So that's another app if you don't want to do a diary thing. Fabulous. So finally, we know any other tips? I know you said about keeping the diary, pacing yourself there and things. Any other tips that you would give to somebody that was in that or a similar situation?
I think, like I say, the rest is really important. And it's what can be really challenging is if there's, you know, either family or friends who perhaps don't understand quite what you're going through. And it can be good to get them to watch and rest, watch that film because that might help them understand a little bit more. But yeah, don't be hard on yourself if you're not kind of getting better as fast as you think you should, because it's
Be kind.
Yeah, be kind.
Be kind to yourself. Yeah, we're very good at doing it with other people, so sometimes we just need to be kind to ourselves as well. Rhian, this has been amazing, a proper insight for us and everybody that's joined us this morning. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It's been a really difficult journey for you. We wish you well. We wish you to continue on the road to recovery there. And we'll keep focus. And yes, we're going to take away from that, be kind to ourselves as well there, and just pace. And it'll be good to see where you are maybe this time next year as well. We'll maybe just catch up and just see how things are going then as well. I'm just seeing what else is in the chat this morning. There we go. People just saying, always out, just again, working about looking at part-time. So definitely anybody, Lucy there, maybe a thing just to give a little bit of thought there too. So thank you very much for joining us today, Rhian. We really, really appreciate it. And to everybody else for joining in as well. So what we have next on the agenda for today, we've got a pre-recorded webinar with Kaylee Hago. Kaylee is part of the Inspire South Ayrshire team. And so that's going to be on at 2 o'clock for about an hour, and then we'll be rounding off the day. Later on, we've got a live webinar and Q&A at 6 p.m. with Rowan Ness from the Ayrshire Cyprus project. So we're off now just to get ready for next webinars and things. Anybody that fancies coming along, you can still join up for the remaining events. You can sign up, just pop over to the website and join with the links, and we've also got the full programme there. All the attendees for today, just to let you know, we're going to put you into a little prize draw to get some sports vouchers. So we'll do that later on, get that sorted out next week to you. And we'll also be sending you out just a short survey. We would really appreciate just if you could take a couple of minutes of your time there just to fill that in for us. It's really good. It just, the feedback that we get from there just helps us plan for future festivals that we do, and also for feeding back to our funders and things. So thank you ever so much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the festival. Remember, the live events are on at the Trinity Hub tomorrow from 10 o'clock through until 3:30, and it would be fantastic if you could come and join us then. So bye for now. Rhian, thanks ever so much again, and
thank you.
Hope to see everybody else soon. Thanks, bye.